So I had conducted a poll asking that what would you like to see this week? I hadn't planned to do a special feature on Chandigarh Airport, but probably there has been a change in plan based on the response. And today I'm going to be talking about how a particular airline is emerging quite differently as compared to others. And what is it that makes that airline different? So today I'll be talking about how Spicejet is carving a place in the aviation industry today and what is it that makes it different.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now ask for your attention.
So let's start by tracing back to December 2014, a point when an airline was almost going to shut down. The airline had almost ceased operations for 2 or 3 days because they didn't even have $2.2 million to pay to the oil companies of India to refuel their planes. It was seen as another Kingfisher kind of a case, an airline that was going to shut down any moment. But who knew? By January 2015, suddenly there would be an entire turnaround story to be seen. And yes, the airline was Spicejet. The stock value of Spicejet had dropped to 19.25 rupees. And guess what the price today is? The stock price of Spicejet today stands at about 136 rupees. It's the highest in the world in the aviation market. So Ajay Singh was appointed as the new CEO of the company. He brought in some capital in 2015. He stopped a few non-profitable routes and tried to cut down costs on a few other aspects. And very important in the Indian aviation industry, he even added capacity aggressively. So now coming down to what I actually wanted to talk about in the video, that what is it that makes Spicejet stand separately? So Spicejet from the very start, especially after the turnaround in 2015, has tried to be a very big market differentiator. As for Spicejet, never go to a route which is too crowded. Start off new routes. Try to go into a point-to-point kind of connectivity rather than following a hub-and-spoke model. Spicejet is lucky that they are a low-cost airline, and being a low-cost airline, they can experiment on a point-to-point model. You don't necessarily need business flyers to make your business flourish. And since you're the only one operating on the route, you obviously have your supplier power. You can play around with the timings, the schedule, the pricing. So yeah, in such a case, the seller becomes the king and not the buyer. Now, if you look at statistics given by DGCA, the Indian aviation industry is expanding at a rate which is almost in the double digits every year, which is huge. Like literally almost everybody is flying right now. Now, at such a point of time when government introduces a plan like Udan, and Spicejet being the first entrant to capture and bid for routes, obviously the airline has to be in profit. So a small brief on Udan. So Udan is called as Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Now, this was started by BJP Sarkar this time, under which various regional connectivity routes have been identified by the government and bids have been given to airlines to offer flights on such routes. So Spicejet today is offering somewhere around 35 daily flights on the Udan scheme. And since Spicejet was the first one to start bidding, they could take up the best of these routes. For example, an airport like Kanpur, which was left unexplored for years, and Kanpur being a hugely populated city, needed an active airport. And guess what? Spicejet gets almost all routes out of Kanpur. They're now flying daily direct between Mumbai and Kanpur, Delhi and Kanpur, Bangalore and Kanpur, and they're also going to start Kolkata to Kanpur very soon. And the biggest catch of Udan, by the way. So government gives special subsidy for operating on such routes. So even if you're not able to fill up your plane, you're getting some money from the government to make up for the losses. But since Spicejet has identified the best routes, they are filling up their planes, making profits, but along with that also getting subsidies from the government. What's a better deal? Another thing that really works for them is their leasing scheme. So when you get onto a Spicejet aircraft the next time, I think about 50% of the times you won't find their livery, their red signature colors and the way the Spicejet is written. Because they believe in a wet lease scheme. They lease an aircraft from some other airline for a brief duration of maybe 4 or 5 years, thus reducing majorly on the maintenance costs, and basically just repaint the plane a little bit on the outside and put a sticker of Spicejet on there. Now that's an interesting leasing scheme which no other airline in the country follows. Most of the airlines in the country are either on a dry lease scheme or they own the planes. So Spicejet over the past 9 months has been able to maintain the highest payload. What exactly payload is in layman terms? It's basically the occupancy rate. How much are you able to fill up your flights? And as for Spicejet, it is their perfect pricing, the perfect placement on routes, and the perfect timing that works for them a lot. And thus, they're able to get full planes. Now, as I had mentioned earlier as well, they believed in a point to point connectivity scheme and not in a hub and spoke model. Let's just not talk about routes which are under Udan or where they're getting any kind of government subsidy. Let's talk about routes where they themselves are experimenting, and it's beautiful how these routes are really reaping a lot of profits for them. So, for example, they are connecting Amritsar to Dehradun, Amritsar to Jaipur, Jaipur to Bhopal, Bhopal to Surat. Another major point, which is something which I've very rarely seen in airlines, is how they're placing their Q400 aircrafts. Now, these are 72 to 80 seater aircrafts, and the biggest point being that they maintain a fleet of somewhere around 94 aircrafts at present, and about 33% of the fleet is just the Q400. Now, usually in big airlines, you would see that it's the bigger planes that actually dominate the fleet hugely. These regional jets are something which are just there for regional connectivity and stuff. But Spicejet heavily operates on these Q400s. Now, I very recently took a flight from Cochin to Maldives. Now, I was surprised that they're operating a 78-seater aircraft on this route. How is it even possible? But then I realized that this is not a very hugely populated route. So obviously you don't need a 186-seater aircraft for that. Moreover, you're obviously cutting down on costs because it's a smaller aircraft, so the fuel consumption is less. But at the same time, you're able to fill up your aircraft, and that too at prices which match the international level rate. That's beautiful profit making. Not just that, for example, there are even longer domestic routes. For example, a route like Ahmedabad to Dehradun. Another major place where airlines falter is how to place the aircrafts on different airports, because when you have your aircraft standing at an airport overnight, you have to pay costs for that. And obviously, if it's a bigger airport like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, for example, you need to pay higher prices. Spicejet, on the other hand, is very intelligently playing around with how they are placing their aircrafts. They are placing their aircrafts at smaller tier 2, tier 3 cities. They have a few of the turboprops standing overnight at Surat, then at Bhopal, at Jaipur. This is some intelligent way of cutting down on your costs. Another place where Spicejet is very swift is how to pull out at the right time. Now, overcapacity is the biggest killer in the aviation industry. Whenever there is some kind of opportunity that is spotted out in the industry, or airlines tend to go and capture that. And what happens is overcapacity. You're actually now offering more number of seats than the demand. So you have two options. Either you move out or you lower your prices, so that people who are taking alternate modes of transport also suddenly start flying. Now, lowering your prices is obviously not going to help you make profits. So it's important when to realize to pull out of such routes. And Spicejet is very swift in such actions. Now, another major thing which obviously Spicejet is living on at the moment with full pride and maze se is the Jet Airways crisis. The biggest advantage being Spicejet operates the same Boeing 737 aircrafts that Jet Airways used to. So what they do, take up the aircrafts, paint them on the outside, put a Spicejet sticker, keep everything same inside and start operating. And yeah, because of the available capacity, they're even getting the maximum slots at the most congested airport of the country, Mumbai. But let's see, there are a lot of news about Jet Airways coming back. If it comes back, then I don't know what Spicejet is going to do. Where will it deploy all of its extra capacity? But the journey for Spicejet hasn't been that smooth also, especially in early 2019 when the Ethiopian Air crash happened and the Boeing 737 MAX was banned. And at that time, Spicejet was operating somewhere around 14 MAX aircrafts and they had to suddenly ground all of them. What happened was a lot of inconvenience to the passengers because Spicejet tried its best to reduce the number of cancellations, but at the same time, they had to play around with the schedule completely. They increase the utilization of each of their aircrafts. Flights that were going around at 7 o'clock in the evening were flying at 12:30 in the night. But then that was a brief period and Spicejet could very easily emerge victorious out of that. So yes, these were my thoughts on what Spicejet is doing differently in the industry. It literally is standing out separate as compared to all other airlines. And presently, it's the only airline which is making profits. So yeah, any thoughts about what this airline is doing so differently, which I probably did not mention, please write down in the comment section. And I would surely love some suggestions on what I should be doing next in the aviation category.